What is up, everybody? Today on the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show, we're diving into 23 rookie redraft, but with 24 comparisons. So we got to be different on this show because we like to have some fun. So we're going to be going through the 23 rookies and looking at how we would draft them now based on all the data. Okay, I'm not doing data, but based on all my vibes. Then we're going to be looking at the 24 class. So we do a lot of 24 work here at Football Guys and elsewhere, and we talk about these guys, and we're just going to be talking about who they're comparable to. So I got the 101. I'm going to be looking at this from a Superflex tight end premium standpoint. So we're just looking at Superflex tight end premium, so you know. So at the 101, I think you have to take CJ Stroud in terms of what he is in Superflex, what he's done this year. I mean, borderline top 5 dynasty quarterback already. And he's probably shot up the highest ranks in terms of the quarterback position. I would argue that probably more valuable than Puka has been in terms of just because of that quarterback position, Superflex being. And then on the other side, I think the 101 for the 24 class right now, as it stands, is USC quarterback Caleb Williams. And if you're not very up to date on college football, he is the former Heisman Trophy winner last year. And he is one of those guys that it depends on the prospect talk that you listen to. You listen to Christian, he's generational. If you listen to some guy on Twitter, he's generational is overused, but he's a very, very solid prospect out there. So these guys are pretty comparable here. Now, as far as me, who I would pick if I had this case, if I had the 101, who would I rather have, Caleb Williams or CJ Stroud? I think you go for proven production on the CJ Stroud side. He's in an offense that already elevates him. We've seen guys miss at that 101 in terms of Bryce Young and these other guys that get drafted first overall, which I predict Caleb Williams to do. So I would probably lean CJ Stroud there. Same way with you there, Christian, just because I know you're a Caleb Williams guy, but you're also a Stroud guy. So
yeah, going into the season, I think I would lean Caleb Williams, just coming off of the Heisman season and kind of the uncertainty with CJ Stroud. And Stroud was my QB1 last year. But you're right. You have to lean into the NFL production, what we've already seen at the NFL level, instead of taking the risk on a Caleb Williams. Now, I've kind of walked back the generational. I don't want that to go out there all the way. I think that he showed some flaws this year on his film. He has a ball security issue that I think will need to be addressed as he develops, as he gets to the NFL. But I do think that Caleb Williams is entering the league as a top 10 dynasty quarterback. I just think it's a few spots behind CJ Stroud at this point.
I agree. I would go with CJ Stroud. I would go with the proven player
Shocker.
there. I mean, well, we're looking at Stroud, though. You know my history with CJ Stroud, to say that's a shocker. But you also know that CJ Stroud was my top quarterback last year. But no, I agree with that. You just bank the sure thing now, and you don't really risk it on re-rolling it and hoping that you roll something higher.
Yeah, viewers of the show, you don't understand that Jeff just took a swipe at me right there with he was my QB1 last year. But I digress. We won't go too far into that. But yeah, that's how I would look at the 101. Stroud and Williams, I think 2 very good prospects. But yeah, you go with that, especially because we don't know where Caleb's going to land. Landing spot really matters. And then just looking at that coaching staff, it's probably going to be on a new coaching staff. So if he comes in a new coaching staff, that's what you have to look at. So that's what we're going to be doing on this. Going to be kind of highlighting these guys as we go through, going through all 12 guys from the 23 class that we're going to kind of redraft. And we'll be talking too about, as we get, obviously you want Stroud moving forward, but as some of these other guys, maybe you move off of them, dynasty buy or sell based on kind of the market value. But before we move on, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Comment below with any questions, trades, or thoughts on the topic.
Also, make sure to head to footballguys.com/plans to become a premium subscriber. Elite subscribers get custom Dynasty content for less than $15 monthly or $70 annually. We have the best Dynasty content in the fantasy football industry. Join today.
All right, 102, Jeff, where you going?
102, my 2023 pick is going to be Anthony Richardson, quarterback from the Indianapolis Colts. And my 2024 pick is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver from Ohio State University. I think that's, I think you can make the argument maybe that a quarterback should go above Harrison Jr., but at this point in the game, I just feel very, very comfortable that he is going to step in, be arguably Dynasty wide receiver 3 with a ceiling to get to Dynasty wide receiver 1. Relatively easily, given the injury that we saw to Justin Jefferson this year and what's going on with Ja'Marr Chase. So I think that conversation would have sounded crazy a couple months ago, but now I think it's probably going to be a real conversation once Harrison shows himself at the NFL level, which I do expect to happen. But here is another example where you're dealing with a super flex league. You've seen proof of concept for Anthony Richardson. And so that's where my pick would lie between the two of them. I would take Anthony Richardson because I feel comfortable that as long as he's able to maintain health, he is going to be a top half of startup pick in Superflex leagues moving forward. I think Harrison Jr. just has a ceiling that even if he hits at his ceiling, he's still probably going to go below Richardson at Richardson's ceiling.
It's an interesting point that you brought up, Jeff, with health, because I think that's the uncertainty with Richardson. And I think that, he wasn't a sure thing. There were still some things he needed to work on. He was still firing the ball at about 90 miles an hour for 5-yard out routes and stuff like that. And so I do think that there's still a few question marks with Richardson, which is why I think Stroud has jumped him in dynasty rankings. But would you be, at least willing to hear the argument for Harrison being a more stable dynasty asset, even if maybe, Richardson's the higher upside guy, but Harrison seems to be maybe a safer bet at this point. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I mean, that's fair to say. And the range of outcomes for a wide receiver that even if he doesn't reach his ceiling, I would expect that he's still going to be a wide receiver 1-ish moving forward. I would be very surprised to see him bust out. And Richardson, that he does have the injury. Those refinement that needs to be done is potentially there. We've seen athletic quarterbacks like that not be able to make that step. I think that he showed that he was much more advanced than I think what people expected. And so that's where I get a little bit more comfortable on that. And the way the physicality showed up, the way the athleticism showed up, you're going to give that guy a lot of opportunity before something goes wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so I would just go with this. I think I'd lean Harrison just because he's safer. Like what Anthony Richardson played 4 games. I don't know. I think what Harrison is, and my argument for this was going to be like Harrison's going to have that Pitts value bump where Pitts is valued super high the whole time, even if he didn't perform right away. So like Harrison, I have a feeling is going to be a top 5 guy for at least probably 2 years, give or take. Now, where he lands, I mean, that matters obviously, but I can't see the Patriots pass on a quarterback where they're at right now. If he goes to Arizona, how comfortable are we with him with Kyler Murray? Based on what we saw with DeAndre, we'd be happy with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, would imagine that Hollywood Brown would be pretty much done there, or I don't know.
Oh, he was done last week. Trust me, I looked at my lineups and he'd had nothing. So he is dead to me. Hollywood, do not put Hollywood Brown a buy. If I see one Hollywood Brown is a buy in Dynasty article, I'm gonna lose my mind this week. And he knocked me out of SFB, but whatever. Yeah. So when you're looking at that, yeah, I think I would love Marvin Harrison in terms of in that landing spot. This is really just like, how risky do you want to be? I think Richardson can be that top 5 guy, but Harrison, I think, is going to have that built-in value there. So I think it's a fun conversation, though.
If he's in Chicago with Justin Fields as the quarterback and DJ Moore still there, how do you feel about that?
I'd probably lean Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, and that's I think that's
Richardson anyway. So
yeah, and I think that's an important kind of when you're having this philosophical conversation. Having the landing spot is just such a huge key, and that really kind of bleeds into safety. Like you can talk about upside injuries and that, but having a landing spot, knowing where they are and knowing what structure is around them is a huge part of the safety of between the two prospects.
That's fair. That's a good point. I think just if you're looking at this landing spot, obviously we're trying to project here, and that's a little harder to do. But if you got Arizona, I'd probably smash that. Chicago, a little tougher sell there. All right, Christian, 103, where are you rolling?
All right, it's time to play. So Bijan Robinson is the 2023 pick. I think that's still the clear one. I think Bijan's widely valued as a top 3 dynasty running back across the board. He's still, I believe, my dynasty running back 1. A lot of things to really like about what Bijan has done. My 2024 pick, please don't cancel me. It's Jayden Daniels, the quarterback from LSU, who's having a historic Joe Burrow level type of season. Just insane numbers across the board. He's about to be the new Heisman winner. That is going to happen here in the next month or two. The reason I would pick Jayden Daniels over the name that you probably thought I was going to pick in Drake Maye is because this is fantasy football. And if Jayden Daniels is a top 10 pick, it's the Anthony Richardson conversation from last year. If Jayden Daniels is a top 10 pick and we know what kind of rushing floor this kid has, why wouldn't you take the higher upside rushing quarterback with fine passing? Now, I will say there's still some evaluation I think that needs to happen with Jayden Daniels on my side of things. I'd really like to see, some of the things that he was turning down the field. But when you talk about this kid, elite accuracy down the field, he operated the offense. He did not turn the ball over. And he put the team on his back at times and had like 500 total yards between his rushing and his passing. The argument for Drake Maye is certainly there. I think maybe Drake Maye has a better NFL career, but from a fantasy football perspective, Jayden Daniels is the higher upside play here. I'm going with him and just taking a risk that he will become a top 10 pick.
Thank you. I love it. We were talking pre-show. And I was coming in and I told you when we had this conversation that I see him valued at like the 109 a lot of different places, but he is either going to be the 103, even maybe the 102 conversation, or he's going to be outside of the first round because he's outside of the first round in the NFL draft. And I think that when you look at the whole package, when you look at he is making the throws downfield, he does have that athleticism. When you see what is happening with Anthony Richardson, I think a team very high in the draft is going to be willing to make that bet to say, hey, this kid is special. He's a special athlete, and he does bring that passing acumen to this position. And so we are willing to invest in him. So I don't have the hesitations that I would be shocked if we're looking at a Malik Willis type situation. And that name's always going to come up when we're at this stage and projecting forward. And it's just going to be Daniels is either a top guy in this class or he's just not in that first round conversation.
Yeah, I mean, he took a shot at me again because I have Daniels at 12 on my big board. I think for me, having him at 12, I think the big thing for me is I'm uncertain what his capital is. So I know he's going to be in the first round. And I'm like, all right, once you figure that out, okay, like he does have that. He has rushing ability. I think I'm concerned that if he takes off and run, though, he's going to get split in half by a defender because he is thin. I think, will that translate over? I think there's a lot of question marks in terms of that. I'd probably lean Bijan Robinson here. I think just me personally, based on like my evaluation at the 103, I would take Bijan just because he's that surefire stud running back. We could take him there. And Jayden Daniels does have a ton of question marks. I think he got better with his deep ball this year, and you saw that with Malik Nabers taking off, the wide receiver at LSU. But he definitely has room for improvement. And he's an older prospect. I mean, he's in college football for 5 years.
I think it's interesting because a lot of the conversation has already turned to the 24 class being much better than the 23 class. We're 3 picks in, and I think kind of defaulted towards the 23 player each pick here. So that's just kind of an interesting thing about. Granted, we have a year of production, we have a year of proof of concept, we have landing spot, we have draft capital, so those are probably a little bit safer.
It's the unknown box, I think. I think like some people like the unknown box, and then some of us tend to kind of go towards the known commodity. I think that's what makes Dynasty fun, but I think that's also what makes it kind of nerve-wracking too. All right, let me jump over to 104. I would take Jahmyr Gibbs here. Everyone knows that I'm a big Gibbs guy. I do think that with Monty there, it doesn't eat into his workload, but I think just based on talent, and what in this class where the value's at, I still think Gibbs can be that guy for you. I still think moving forward next year, are they going to get even more involved? I love him in this offense. And then on the other side for 24 class, I'm taking Malik Nabers. So I'm not taking a quarterback here. I'm going to take another surefire wide receiver that, when we did this show almost, I don't know now, like 2-3 months ago, whenever we first started, I remember Jeff brought up a good point about Malik Nabers. He's a wide receiver there. He was like, hey, he might just be valued as Marvin Harrison Jr. Like he can definitely do some things from a fantasy perspective. And when you look at the tape and you're looking at Malik Nabers, like he's probably, I don't know if he's going to win the Blitnikoff, which is the wide receiver of the year, because Marvin Harrison Jr. probably should have got it from last year, so it might be a makeup this year. But Malik Nabers is probably one of the best wide receivers in college football, if not the best this year, just based on the numbers and what he's been able to do and his impact there. And like the way I look at this is fun. I think that he could be like next year in December, we could talk about Malik Nabers being like a dynasty wide receiver 10. Like really, we could see him being that high based on his landing spot. So Nabers and Gibbs in this. I still think I lean Gibbs a little bit, but that's just my heart talking, my vibes. Like I told you at the beginning of the show, I was going to kind of lean towards that way. I still think like having a dominant, running back, I think he's a Dynasty top 5 guy. I don't know what that really means anymore in Dynasty, whether we should have rankings or not, but I do think Gibbs plugging in there and Nabers is going to take some time to kind of develop. We don't know landing spot. Gibbs, I know they are going to use him.
And just when I said that we've taken the 23 guy at every pick, I'm going to go with Malik Nabers over Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that if we got bell cow Jahmyr Gibbs, that we've seen the capability, then I would go with Gibbs, but a little bit shorter running back shelf life. And I think that Dan Campbell has made himself very clear. He likes that power back. I think if it's not David Montgomery, it's going to be somebody else. You're going to kind of look at Jahmyr Gibbs as maybe when somebody's injured, he has sky high Christian McCaffrey upside. Maybe when somebody's not, you're really kind of hoping for a touchdown, or you're kind of scraping maybe low end RB1 scoring.
Yeah, I also lean Nabers here. I do want to throw out some potential landing spots just based on where the draft is landing right now. So Chicago at 5, if they don't take Marvin Harrison Jr., I think he could go be the wide receiver 2 to DJ Moore. New York Jets definitely need a second wide receiver. Going there with Rodgers, him and Garrett Wilson. It's an interesting dynamic. The ones I'm afraid of, the Giants, the Titans, I think that's probably it. I don't think he gets out of the top 10. I think this is Chase and Waddle from that draft. Both top 10 picks when we weren't really seeing that from wide receivers. I think we're going to see that with Harrison and Nabers this year.
All right. I'm just going to be the Gibbs guy. That's what I'm going to do. Swift proved me right after 4 years. Gibbs, you got to prove me right. All right, Jeff, 105. Where are you going?
My 2023 pick in the 105 in a tight end premium is Dalton Kincaid from tight end from Buffalo. And my 2024 pick in Superflex tight end premium is Drake Maye, who's still on the board. And so we are looking at first the selection of Kincaid in tight end premium. I think that we are already seeing major glimpses that Kincaid could be Josh Allen's really top target moving forward. We don't know. Contractually, it seems like it's going to be hard to get Stephon Diggs off the Bills next year, but it certainly seems like it's headed in the direction that Diggs is not going to be long-term in Buffalo. And while maybe the Bills go out and add a receiver in this deep wide receiver class, that might ease some things a little bit. But right now, it seems like you're already at the place where Kincaid can emerge as Josh Allen's Travis Kelce and kind of be there for the next 10 years. And so that's why I lean Kincaid as my top tight end right now. I know other people might have another top tight end out of this class, and I mean, that's fine. But I think offensively, structurally, I think Kincaid's in a better spot. And then Drake Maye, the selection there, I would take Drake Maye over Dalton Kincaid. We're at that point. Superflex. I'm going to roll that dice on that quarterback that could potentially hit. I mean, realistically, it seems like from NFL talk, he could be the 101 in the actual NFL draft. And so grabbing a 101 quarterback in the actual NFL draft at the 105 in a Superflex draft is kind of a no-brainer to me. And I think it's definitely has a higher value ceiling than what Dalton Kincaid would possess from the position.
Yeah, I lean Drake Maye as well here. I made the case for Jayden Daniels over him for fantasy football purposes, but I do think that when you look at the quarterback landscape, Drake Maye is going to get to a spot he's going to start immediately, and I think he's going to put up some decent numbers. I think this is a good quarterback class with those top 3 especially. We could have a few more that come out that kind of make this an even stronger class, but these are the 3 I feel confident are going to come out, and you take the quarterback or the tight end 9 times out of 10, and really 9.999 times out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, you lean Maye here. I think, Kincaid was right in terms of I think moving forward projecting wise, it's hard to project him not I don't want to say tight end 1 all at the top, but it's hard not to when you're looking at what they're going to have or lack of what they may have next year or what those weapons look like. You have to love that. I was pulling up to my combined rankings to see where I had old Drake Maye. So I have him as QB14 combined in terms of, college prospects and overall, and that might be a little high, but in terms of where I see him maybe coming in next year, that's where I put him there with Kincaid. I think I have him as a top 3. He's my Dynasty 3 right now. I still lean Maye though. I think I have Maye in there in terms of just that quarterback in that position. 106. Oh, go ahead, Jeff. You got something?
Yeah, I did want to say, I think it's interesting to look back with the hindsight 2020 lens. It's interesting to me how firmly consensus held on guys like Quentin Johnston and Quentin Johnston and Zay Flowers being above Dalton Kincaid, especially in Superflex tight end premium leagues. I mean, hindsight's obviously 2020, but it really seems like we should have been a lot more open-minded to, one, the struggles that Quentin Johnston would be facing to come in, but also maybe the upside on Zay Flowers in a Baltimore offense relative to the upside especially positionally, of Dalton Kincaid, and maybe some of that. I don't know if it's Kyle Pitts blowback or what, but they were drafted very, very close together in the actual NFL draft, and I think hindsight being 2020. We should definitely value Dalton Kincaid much higher than where consensus settled in on that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, Quentin Johnston, bad drop, but good game. But people are only talking about the drop, so that's unfortunate. Good game, kid. I hope you get better. 106. I'm taking Bryce Young at the 106. I think that while Bryce Young has shown some bad habits and there's nothing around him and the offensive line is bad and the wide receivers are bad and everything's bad, I do believe that Bryce Young is still going to figure it out because he's a smart player. We've talked about him a lot over the last couple of weeks. My 2024 pick is Brock Bowers. I made a 9.999 out of 10 joke, and I might lean Brock Bowers in this case only because I think Brock Bowers is entering the league as probably a top 3 to 5 dynasty tight end with how good of a pass catcher he is. I made a comment on Twitter about Brock Bowers recently, or X or whatever it's called, and someone came back and said, you don't want Brock Bowers running routes against NFL corners. Yes, I do. I think he's going to be fine doing that. He's going to be a slot wide receiver. He's a good inline tight end. I think you're going to get a lot of George Kittle comps because he's a good blocker. He's tenacious when he's out there. He's going to be on the field a ton. I'll still lean Bryce Young because he's a quarterback and super flex, but it's very, very close. And I think that Brock Bowers is probably, it's going to be the Kincaid discussion, I think, next year, where he might slip in drafts a little bit, but he shouldn't.
I am not giving up on Bryce Young. Bryce Young, this is you and me. We're riding this in together. And you know what? To be credit to put my mouth, money where my mouth is. Excuse me. I traded on a team that I'm kind of rebuilding on. I needed a second quarterback. I'm like a middle of the pack team. I'm gonna make the playoffs. I'm gonna get just worked in the first round. Like it's really bad. I traded Kamara straight up for Bryce Young. And I needed a QB2. I had no QB2. The only QB I had on my roster was Herbert. That's it. That's all I got. So I needed a QB2. So I believe Bryce Young can be a solid QB2 in super flex formats. I saw good things this last game. The interception at the end was not good. I was really struggling with that one when I was watching it. But he is getting eaten alive by defenses out there. They can't protect him. So I do think the talent is still there. It didn't go away. New coaching staff there. Yeah, in terms of this, I still think I lean Bryce, but yeah, Brock is pretty solid prospect. There's really not a lot to say about Brock.
Yeah, and I mean, if the SEC is just truly the very, 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 very best of college football, then Brock Bowers is already going against elite NFL talent week in and week out in such a very, very difficult conference. And so the concerns about him matching up against NFL wide receivers in running NFL route concepts just aren't there, obviously. I mean, the SEC is just so much better than everybody else in college football,
So I need to be better about saying, so Brock Bowers is a tight end that plays at Georgia. And a lot of dynasty managers listening to this just should know that because we've talked about him on the show. But if you don't, I don't want to exclude you. So that's why Jeff went on an SEC rant there. This was a mistake to have this show immediately following the college football playoff ranking drops.
All right, let me get into 107. I'll take Sam LaPorta. LaPorta, there's a lot of buzz about LaPorta, like in terms of some people think he should be a dynasty tight end one. And if that's how you think, I don't blame you. Hey, he's produced. He's done well this year. I think him and Kincaid are definitely up there in the top 5. You have to like what he's been able to do in terms of, tight end form fantasy. I think he ranks top half of the league in deep targets too, and 9th in red zone targets. So he's up there. This kid is getting everything that you saw. He's had, I think, 17 targets the last 2 games. You have to love that in terms of his immediate production there. I do think though, there's a lot of mouths to feed in Detroit. And so in tight end premium, I think one of those things when you look at it, projecting him moving forward, you have to understand that. I think Jameson Williams is coming on a little bit. I know people are calling him a roster clogger. I'm not ready to go that with Jameson Williams. I think Jameson Williams is a damn good football player, and I think he's learning and he's getting into that time. You got to remember he come off that injury last year. He's a rookie this year. He's essentially kind of learned that stuff. So there is going to be some of that coming on. On the 24 class, Xavier Worthy is my guy, apparently, because I've ranked him higher than anybody else I ever see. So I like what he does. Xavier Worthy is a wide receiver at Texas. He's a smaller prospect, but he creates separation. He's one of the best route runners I've seen. He's going to fit right into NFL systems if he declares. And if you want to watch him play, he's playing in the college football playoff this upcoming playoff for college football. Watch him, because when you watch him, he's going to translate really well over into the NFL. Now, me and Jeff are going to argue about Xavier Worthy and his teammate, A.D. Mitchell, probably all offseason. But I do like Worthy. I think I like where he fits in here. I'm going to go Worthy on this, and I know I'm an outlier here because a lot of people are not going to even know who Xavier Worthy is. I saw somebody say he was like the 301 in Superflex formats right now. So they saw him say really far, like behind in terms of because of his size. But I think Xavier fits the NFL. I'm all aboard this, and I would probably lean there.
I mean, if you're quoting prospect size, talking about Xavier Worthy, what are you saying about Tank Dell? I mean,
still do. It doesn't matter.
He broke his leg, so yeah, Xavier Worthy's got to break his leg now.
Yeah, I mean, he can't put Xavier Worthy in blocking on the goal line, so you have to move him down in my dynasty ranks. Okay, no, it's I think that I would take LaPorta over Xavier Worthy back to the 2023 class. I think pretty comfortably, probably. I think LaPorta. I mean, we're talking. I think it is really splitting hairs between him and Dalton Kincaid. I just like the future situation for Kincaid better, and Kincaid had a higher draft capital. I think Kincaid's a little bit more of a natural receiver than LaPorta is, but I think you're exactly right there on the mouse to feed in Detroit, and writing Jameson Williams off is just not something I'm willing to do. I saw the end around touchdown last week, and that kid has elite athleticism and speed and unteachable traits.
I lean LaPorta, but it's really close for me too. I still like Worthy. He's my wide receiver 5 right now, I believe, in the 2024 class. And I think he's going to enter as like a top 36 dynasty wide receiver for me, if I remember correctly. So that's about where we're at. And of course, draft capital matters. I do think that Worthy's going to be a first round or second round pick. So that's why I'm comfortable with him at the 107, still lean LaPorta, because we've seen some really good production, especially in tight end premium here. If this were without tight end premium, I'd probably lean Worthy for what it's worth. Like that wordplay.
All right, Jeff, where are you going?
Yeah, 108. I'm going to go with Jaxon Smith-Njigba from wide receiver from the Seattle Seahawks in my 23 pick. My 2024 pick is Odunze, wide receiver for the Washington Huskies. And this is I think an interesting conversation, because I do still buy Jaxon Smith-Njigba heavily in Dynasty. We've seen him come on the last couple of weeks. He had a great play that he just missed controlling the ball on a long touchdown against Dallas. And so I think that that's one of those things that if you're watching the games, you're seeing how Jaxon Smith-Njigba is showing up at the NFL level. If you're looking at the box score, you're not seeing high numbers. And so I think that there's two different things happening there. Tyler Lockett is not going to be here very much longer. And even DK Metcalf as a number one target volume wide receiver, we haven't ever really seen him step up in that. We've seen Lockett get more than enough volume. I think that long term, Jaxon Smith-Njigba is going to be the wide receiver 1 in terms of volume, in terms of fantasy in that offensive scheme. Odunze is an interesting conversation, because I think that he has the potential to be another top 10 wide receiver in this class. I value him as my wide receiver 3. And so you're really looking at a situation where you're not dealing with the Seattle wide receivers with Tyler Lockett still being there. You're not dealing with the uncertainty for Geno Smith. You're re-rolling for a player who could go higher in the draft than where Jaxon Smith-Njigba went. And you don't know what that situation might be. And so you're kind of opening the mystery box relative to Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think I lean Jaxon Smith-Njigba still. Just I've seen proof of concept at the NFL level, and there's less uncertainty about where he fits in at the NFL level, I think, than Odunze presents. Now, if Odunze does go in the top 12, top 10 picks, whatever it might be, that might flip pretty quickly.
Hypothetical, Odunze goes to the Buffalo Bills. Which player do you take?
Odunze all day.
Yeah, I think that's why it's really difficult here. I still lean Jaxon Smith-Njigba too. I think he was a better prospect, and I think you make some very solid points about Tyler Lockett leaving soon, or not being there soon. And honestly, I think that there's a chance that Smith-Njigba is the highest scoring fantasy wide receiver on that team next year. So I lean that way, but it's very close, and Odunze is a fantastic prospect.
Yeah, I go JSN because I do think that is, but I think the argument is location will matter in terms of who's throwing him the football. And again, I've never been a high Geno Smith guy, so that's why he tore up my Cowboys the other night. But also I'm concerned about that moving forward. I think Rome, if he found himself with Josh Allen, I think you have to seriously look at that and say, oh yeah, that's the player I'm going to go to. I lean JSN, but I like these picks. All right, 109, Christian, where are you going?
I'm going to take Jordan Addison for my 2023 pick, and I know that it's sexy to take Puka Nacua and take Dell right here, and there are a few different options. I think we'll get to them before we're done, but Addison, to me, still a highly drafted wide receiver that we've seen the production, we've seen all the flashes. I think this offense, there is some uncertainty moving forward. I think that's what scares you a little bit is what happens to this team without Kirk Cousins, but I still believe in the talent of Jordan Addison, and I think that we're going to see some good moments from Addison. I think he can be a high-end wide receiver too for a long time. 2024 pick, Keon Coleman, the Florida State wide receiver. Interesting, definitely going to be a highly debated prospect. He's a very physical guy. He's a high-level athlete. He's a catch point type of guy. He's a fantastic blocker. So he profiles as a traditional X. He has started dropping the ball. Apparently, Pro Football Focus said he didn't drop a pass all year, even though I had watched like 2 or 3, and then he dropped, I think, 2 or 3 in their championship game alone. And also, he doesn't really create separation, and so I get scared of wide receivers like that. So I lean Addison here. I do. I feel better about Coleman than a lot of the industry does. But also, I've seen Coleman mocked in the top 20 as well in mock drafts. So I think that could be an interesting conversation a year from now.
I do expect him to go top 20. I'm there on him. I think that it's unteachable things, and I think he's a better prospect than Quentin Johnston. We saw where Quentin Johnston went, so that's kind of where I'm sitting there. But I probably would lean Addison over Coleman. I think that Addison, obviously being with Justin Jefferson and that quarterback situation, are 2 knocks on Addison, but we've seen one have the big play ability to still be a fantasy scorer on limited volume, but I think we've also seen him have the ability to be one of those guys that can handle heavy volume in an NFL offense.
Jordan Addison is going to be Tyler Lockett. I feel like that's the kind of fantasy asset he's going to be. Not necessarily like play style, whatever, but just a guy who's like, oh, Addison put up wide receiver 1 numbers today. Oh, yeah, 27 PPR points. Oh, okay. Like that's how I look at Addison, and that's just kind of how I feel about him as like an asset. I'm actually lower on Keon Coleman than I think both of you guys. This draft process is going to be fun. I'm going to like this. But yeah, I think to me, I like Jordan a little bit more. I think he's in that offense, whether or not he's quarterback. I think he just is going to catch balls. And I think that's what you look at in terms of him with Lockett. That's how I use the comparison. All right, 110, and we'll go a little quicker here so we can get this through 12 rounds here on the YouTube channel. 110, I'm going to take Devon Achane, I think it's Chan, from Miami, running back. I mean, when he's on the field, he's explosive. Like he just scores touchdowns and he just puts up PPR points. You have to like that. On the flip side, I'm going to take TreVeyon Henderson. He's a running back at Ohio State. He's probably the running back 1 of the class. But again, running backs right now, all across the board, in terms of what you want from your running back, what's the draft capital going to be? But if I had to bet someone that has 3 down ability, it's TreVeyon Henderson. This is a fun one between who you'd rather have, because Achane has kind of shown that he can do this in the NFL. He's in a perfect system for his play style. Both have injury concerns. Like TreVeyon Henderson has not been able to stay healthy in college, and we see that from the other side. I'm going to take the bigger back, though. I'm going to take TreVeyon Henderson just from a standpoint. I think he can be a 3-down guy. He can catch passes, but he can also be like a bell cow, where I don't know if Achane can do that. So I'm going to go Henderson. It's close. It's super close. And I understand that Henderson, he could just fall out of day 2. I don't think he's going to fall out of day 2, but running backs are all over the board right now. Jeff, as the resident Ohio State fan, where are you leaning on this one?
Running backs are so landing spot dependent, and Achane has about the best landing spot that he possibly could have. And so, yeah, I hear you on volume, but we've seen him be consistently a top half of running back 1 finisher on less limited volume. And so I love him in that Miami scheme. As long as Mike McDaniel's there, I'll go with the certainty of having Devon Achane.
Wimp.
Yeah, I'm there too. I think these 2 could potentially be teammates next year. I think TreVeyon's exactly the type of back that Mike McDaniel would like to add. I know Mostert's getting a little bit older. I think there's some situations where they add another running back like Seattle did, and everyone's like, what the heck? Why would they do this? But I do lean Achane in this instance.
Get him to the Chargers. Get TreVeyon to the Chargers. I'm going to start that petition.
That'd be great.
Fun. Yeah, I mean, any of those spots where you can see him get that usage, I just can't get away from like how high I was him as a prospect. I think he can get back to that. Like, I really do feel like from a dynasty asset, you'd be excited to have him. All right, Jeff, 111, and then Christian will take us out at 112.
Yeah, so we have to do it at some point. So Puka Nacua, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. And then my 24 pick would be Troy Franklin, wide receiver for the Oregon Ducks. And I'm in the bag for Franklin, man, to be honest with you. I really love Franklin quite a bit. And so I'm going to just go with Franklin, the mystery box. He's one of my favorite players coming up in this cycle. I think that where I've seen him in mock valuations is just flat wrong. I mean, this guy can absolutely fly, 6'3". He has worked on all levels of the field. He's worked as a primary receiver. He's got everything you want in the package. And I think that this is the guy that probably, from what I've seen, people are most wrong on their current valuation.
This one's really tough for me because I think there is value to what Puka has done in that situation and how often he's being targeted, but that situation is volatile. I don't know how long Matthew Stafford is going to play football. I just don't. And Troy Franklin, like Jeff said, we've seen him win in so many different ways. We've seen him win against zone coverage. We've seen him win down the field against man. We've seen him make contested catches. There's really not a whole lot to dislike about him other than the fact that he's a little skinny. With that said, I'll still lean Puka because I need to buy some good graces back on Puka Nacua. And I do value a lot of what he's done. He's been really good. And I don't know if that sticks, but I'll take that risk here.
I'll take Puka as well. I know that's going to be a shock to many out there as the Troy Franklin guy, but I think right now I'm going to it's hard to look at Puka and what he's been able to put up this season. And when you talk about proven assets and be like, yeah, I'll take Troy Franklin. I don't know if he's 178 pounds. I think he is. I hope that he gets on that scale and he's there. But again, I like Troy because he's improved so much in everything he's done this year. That's what you want from him. But I'll lean Puka. Who would have thought in December we'd be talking about Puka Nacua being 111, which is probably too low for a lot of people out there. A lot of people probably have him at the 106, 107.
I think it's also worth noting that we've talked about guys that could end up as top 10, top 12 wide receivers in Dynasty. Troy Franklin has that outcome in him as well at this time next year. Landings, if he goes to the Buffalo Bills, if he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, like if he goes to the Chiefs, he's probably entering the league as a top 12 Dynasty wide receiver. So that's worth noting, but I'll lean Puka. 112, I'm going Tank Dell. I know he just broke his leg, but what he did before he broke his leg was absolutely remarkable. What he's been able to do with CJ Stroud. I actually think this is probably low. Looking back, I probably should have taken him where I took Jordan Addison and flipped these two picks. But I thought that in the middle, didn't want to change it and make these guys mad. So Tank Dell here. Emeka Egbuka on the 2024 side. Egbuka's a weird one because I'm not entirely sure if he's going to declare or if he's going to transfer like all the other Ohio State players. But if he does declare, I think he's probably a top 50 to 75 pick. I easily lean Tank Dell at this point, though. I think you take the CJ Stroud stack and you run with it. What would be really funny, though, is if the Texans draft Emeka to be their wide receiver 3, not that they really need wide receivers, and then you have the Ohio State connection, and then who's the favorite? But I lean Tank Dell.
Got anything?
All right.
No, good. I agree.
Yeah, lean Tank Dell, short guy, makes guys miss, can catch balls. That's how I go with that.
Yeah. All right. The full version of every show can be found on your favorite podcast app, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find us, the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show. Make sure you head over there, like, subscribe, leave a review, leave a 5-star review, preferably. 4 stars are okay. 5 stars preferable. And we're about to go talk about some other stuff over there, trades and whatnot. So catch us over there.